Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Softball America podcast. Happy September. It is fall. It is still hot as heck where I am. Gray Robertson. Tara Henry is here. Tara, is it hot where you are right now? Where even are you? I've lost track.
That's actually a great question almost every day. But now I am back on the West Coast for a couple days before I head back east to Atlanta. It's been just such an incredible summer on my end, and I can't wait to talk about the fall because, gosh, there's so much happening in the softball world.
Oh, if you think September 17th, what could they oh no, we have the whole rundown ready to go. We have so much to discuss with special guests. Sydney Supley is going to swing by. Brady Vernon is going to be here. We're going to cover transfer class rankings. We're going to cover a lot of the commitments that have happened. We're going to talk about this bad boy. The SEC conference slate is here. We've got Mary Nutter teams. There are a couple teams not on the list that I want to talk about as well. Tara, should we start with the land where it just means more?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start because once that schedule dropped, there's so much to take a look at. Obviously, with the addition of OU and Texas is huge, but when you really break it down, and Gray, I know this is almost one of your most favorite things to do in the world, is breaking down the strength of schedule in terms of the SEC. When you take a look at everybody's schedule, it is really, really interesting, especially with the addition of those two schools.
Yeah, and certainly with the format not changing, but the number of teams doing that. So who you're not playing is almost as important as who you are playing. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, before we dive into this beautiful sheet, beautiful people, please hit us up. We're going to do a little Q&A later. We want to hear where you're watching. Send us a note. Let us know where you are, what you're doing, what's got you excited, and send us questions, Tara.
Absolutely. And please let us know. I know we did a poll earlier in the week, and we're going to get back into having a regular weekly show. Let us know what time is best for you. Again, let us know where you're tuning in from and what time is best for you. We're going to try it at night, Tuesday nights. We think during the day people are at work and it's not as easy to listen and work at the same time. So hopefully you all are off work and enjoying some time with the family and some softballers, and we'll enjoy our preview into the fall and just getting back into softball season.
All right. What in the world has jumped out to you, Tara Henry? Because I got to say, when I got this lovely schedule here, one of the things that stuck out to me was Oklahoma, welcome to the league. You're closing with Texas and at Florida. And again, we'll look at who the teams don't have on the schedule. And I've conjured up a little metric based off my own personal expectations for this season. But for Oklahoma, that is a brutal final 2 weeks. And, they've got some tough road trips at Arkansas, at Missouri, at Alabama, at Florida. Those are four tough environments to play in for the Sooners.
I mean, your question at the top of that was what did you notice most? And I think that's it. I think you hit the nail on the head, Gray. When you take a look at Oklahoma and Texas, both coming into the SEC, tough schedules for both the Sooners and the Longhorns. And we've talked about this at length, and the Sooner fans are always saying, oh, we're going to be fine. We're the Sooners. The SEC, whether I love to say it or not, it is different. It just is. And it just might technically mean more to some people, not me yet. But
all right, we'll give you half credit. You kind of said it.
Thank you. But in my first full season actually covering softball in and around the SEC, let me tell you, it is a different beast. And I must say that for Oklahoma, I know that when that schedule was released for them to be ending at Florida, that could be a make or break series for both those squads because, again, Tim Walton has reloaded not only in the transfer portal, but in terms of his freshman class coming in. And I know when Brady Vernon hops on here, we're going to talk a little bit about that. But, yes, that was probably the biggest, kind of thing that screamed at me when it jumped off the page or off the screen was taking a look at OU's schedule. Gray, what were your thoughts? I know you have metrics. I'm just going to let you have the floor because I know how much you love this so much.
All right. So I have come into the year thinking we have a pretty clear top three and bottom three in the SEC. I think top three are Oklahoma, Texas, and Florida, not necessarily in that order. I'm just listing teams. And I think the bottom three are Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. At this point, my mind can certainly be swayed. I reference that because Sin asks, hi from Albuquerque, New Mexico. What are your way too early SEC preseason rankings? I think that top three, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I look at that and I say, okay, who doesn't have to play some of those top three teams? I look at a team like South Carolina, who avoids Florida and Texas. I look at a team like Texas A&M, who avoids both Oklahoma and Texas as well. And then who doesn't have to play the bottom three, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State, because those are, in my opinion, your best chances at maybe sweeps in this conference, although some things can get unpredictable. Texas A&M does not play Kentucky, Ole Miss, or Mississippi State. So that to me says this is a total wild card of a schedule. So I metrically plotted it all out. And basically, if you missed one of the bottom three teams, but got two of the top three teams, and put you in the plus. I gave you a +1. And again, very scientific here. By my own metric, the teams who got off the quote unquote easiest, Georgia. Oh, Fang. Oh, here we go. Fang's got questions. Texas, Florida, Tennessee, A&M, and Oklahoma for me. Teams who don't have to play some of the top. Georgia does not get Florida, Texas, or Oklahoma. Kentucky does not get Florida or Oklahoma. Ole Miss does not get Oklahoma or Texas, but you know how I feel about Kentucky and Ole Miss. And South Carolina does not get Florida or Texas as well. So I think the one that jumps off the page is a team like Georgia, just because they do truly avoid all three of those proverbial top teams in the SEC. The problem for the Bulldogs is they're going to figure out what life is like after they lose one of the most stacked senior classes they've ever had. So the timing is a little off for the Bulldogs, but I really like the slate that they got just because they avoided those top three for me.
And when you take a look at this, Gray, like you said, the format doesn't change. It is going to be those years, and it's going to be your strength of schedule or the luck of the draw per se. And I agree. When you take a look at a Georgia squad that doesn't have to face some of the top teams, and then South Carolina, obviously with a new head coach there for the Gamecocks, and Ashley Chastain did an incredible job over at Charlotte, jumping over to South Carolina. What is that going to look like in life after Bev Smith? I just think there's so many pieces to the puzzle. Jamie Traxel gets an extension at Ole Miss with another new coaching staff there. What is that going to look like? I think for me, the SEC in those first couple of weekends, as we take a look at the schedule, is really going to, kind of shake out what we're going to have to take a look at. But it's going to look different. The SEC this year is going to be so different. And I'm excited. I'm excited for the SEC. I'm excited for softball season. But when you take a look at that just slate of games week in and week out, it's going to be who stays healthy. Honestly, great. It's going to be who stays healthy and whose pitching staff is able to go through that wear and tear of the SEC and, again, be able to have that luck of the draw in a team that could be hot or a team that could be not. In terms of who's going to get that title. Because right now, I think it's up for grabs. I think there's loads of teams, and I agree with Fang. I think those are some top teams to take a look at in Texas, Florida, Tennessee, A&M, and OU. But again, super early, but super fun to talk about.
And one of the other things I look at, stretches. You talk about the wear and tear of the SEC. Well, where are the really difficult stretches? While there are two road trips that I'm excited for, Alabama's stretch of at LSU, Oklahoma at home, and at Florida is pretty brutal for 3 straight weeks. You've got a team like Florida who opens at Texas A&M and then hosts Texas. Oklahoma, we talked about that a little bit, finishing with Texas at home and then at Florida. As I continue to look down, Arkansas,
I need this sheet that you're looking
at Tennessee.
I need this sheet that Gray has. Maybe we'll get it up on the site so everybody can easily see who is going where, because when you take a look at week in and week out on the SEC actual website, it's just showing you week by week. Doesn't have it broken down per team.
I'll get you a chart. But I mean, that is a big part of it. Like, who can figure out how they're going to survive those really, really long and complicated stretches, because there are going to be more long and complicated stretches now that you've added teams the caliber of Texas and Oklahoma. And then also one of the things I last look at is, all right, who are the perceived teams who can win the league in my eyes, and where did they finish, right? Because oftentimes the SEC title race comes down to the last weekend or two. I look at Oklahoma at Florida. That's going to do a lot to determine the title race. Texas hosts Kentucky. I've made my feelings right now about Kentucky pretty clear. If Texas is in a position where you win the last weekend of the regular season, you win that series, you win the conference, I'm really going to like the position that they're in. And then you look at Tennessee at Texas A&M. That's another one that could determine a lot. So we've seen in the past some of the title teams have buys the last weekend. I don't think that's going to be the case. The team with a bye the final weekend of conference play is Auburn. And while I think the Malveaux are going to make that program better,
about the Malveaux, another new face.
Yeah. I'm not willing to pick them to win the SEC. Oh, okay. So I don't think that they're in that discussion. But the last weekend is always something to circle. And I think Texas has the best draw of any of the potential title contenders.
You're talking about the last weekend.
The last weekend.
That's May 1st through 3rd. So that's correct. Alabama at South Carolina, LSU at Arkansas, Oklahoma at Florida, Georgia at Mizzou, Kentucky at Texas, Ole Miss at Mississippi State, and Texas A&M at Tennessee.
Yeah, so if I'm Texas, if I'm in a spot to win the conference going into the last weekend, I feel really good right now. Again, Kentucky could do something this year that totally surprises us. And I would love to see that, because I love Coach Lawson, and I think she's done a great job over the years with that program. But that's just one of the things that my eye immediately goes to, looking down the line with a good 7 months until that time actually comes up.
And again, those of you that are just joining us, let us know where you are tuning in from. And Nate has a comment. Can't believe the won't play Texas or OU. You can't believe it? I think that's probably good luck.
Yeah, I know. Somebody on the Alabama Facebook page was like, it's criminal there's no Tennessee here. And I was like, hold up. Alabama's played Tennessee like 12 times the last 2 seasons. You're not good. That's not enough for you. The way that the schedule works is there will be some years where you don't play a rival. That's just how it is. That's how it's going to be. Sorry. That doesn't mean you can't schedule them. There might be some years, and maybe this year, I don't know, I haven't seen their schedule, where a Texas A&M could schedule a Texas for a non-conference game. I don't think that's happening because they're playing in fall ball, but it's something that coaches can do. We've seen it done in the past. So just because they're not part of the conference slate doesn't necessarily mean that a conference team isn't a part of the schedule in some capacities. It's a possibility.
I don't know about you, Gray, but I'm still having heart palpitations from that super regional with Texas and Texas A&M.
Oh, so. You mean the trash delay? That was my favorite part.
Yeah. Oh, the trash delay. I totally forgot about that.
Oh, yeah.
I was talking about the play on the field, not the trash delay.
Real quick, Kristen Johnson says, hi from San Diego, California. Tara, your thoughts on the new Pac-12-ish in 2027? What are we calling it?
Is it Pac-8, Pac-6? 6?
Whom's this to say? But what do you, I mean, is this, we can briefly touch on it before we get back to the SEC schedule. I just wanted to shout out Kristen Johnson, who's always been a good listener. But you had to feel a little joy in your Pac-12 heart when you saw that the league is staying alive.
Yeah, there is joy. It was hard, obviously, when we thought there was going to be no Pac. It's just going to be a different look. Again, like we're seeing a new look in the SEC. The Pac-12 is going to be a completely different look. I must say, when I saw San Diego State in there, Boise State, Fresno State, some perennial powers back in the day in terms of Fresno State and Fresno State softball. But it's going to be a different look. And, the Pac will have different teams in it. But for me, for that conference to still stay alive, yes, there was a big flutter more in my heart for that. And hopefully the Pac can add a few more teams. And so we can keep that Pac 8, 6, 10, 12, whatever it ends up being alive.
Anything else on the SEC slate that you want to broach,
No, we can always
discuss?
bring that back. And if anybody has any questions, you guys can drop them in the chat again. So if you have any questions about the SEC or the pack or anything else, please be sure to put them in the chat.
All right, let's move on to the Mary Nutter. We have our teams. What a time to be alive. And why not bring in our special who knows where she is correspondent, Sydney Supley. Hi, Sydney. What is your
Hi,
location?
everybody. I am in Lincoln, Nebraska. Oh, so beautiful. I came in, there was horse pillows on my hotel bed. The only
Sure.
in Lincoln, Nebraska. I texted Rhonda right away and she's like, this is very on brand. But I got to watch practice today. I got to talk to Emerson Cope. Tomorrow, Jordy Ball is taking me fishing. So I'm getting the full Lincoln, Nebraska tour right now.
Wow.
I know. It's
Wait,
amazing.
Jordy's taking you fishing.
Yes, that was the deal. To get her to talk softball, she was going to get me to fish first. So she has it all staked out. We're going to her uncle's property. It's like 30 minutes from here. And I was like, do I need to bring my fishing pole? She's like, oh, no, no. I have your fishing pole. I have your boots. She's worried I'm going to wear like the wrong footwear. So she's got me all ready to go, which is probably true. I did only pack heels and running shoes.
What time of day is this happening? Are you getting up at 5 a.m. to go fishing with Jordy Ball?
No, we have to do it a little bit later. School practice priorities. It's like
Sure.
4:30, 6:30 type of fishing.
Amazing. Well,
I know.
wait. I mean, I can't wait for this. I didn't even know about this part of the tour, of Sydney Supley's tour. I cannot wait. Wish I was there. I would love to go fishing. That sounds so great.
I know. I'll keep you updated. I'll have a little tally going. How many fishes she catches versus how many fishes I catch.
Well, hey, this is fitting too that you're in Lincoln because, yes, Nebraska will be playing in the Mary Nutter along with Missouri, Northwestern, Arkansas, Baylor. Cal is there, noted ACC team Cal, Minnesota, Oregon, Oregon State, Tennessee, UCLA, Utah, Washington. So, Sid, Tara, I know that that's a slate that has to excite you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I love Tara put it in our group chat. Obviously, first of all, they introduced it with emojis. So that was like so fun. And to just see the representation, I think for myself personally, for the Big Ten, the first look at the new faces really of the Big Ten. You mentioned Washington obviously coming in and some of the other powerhouses that we had before. I know people are fired up to see this Nebraska team and the new faces. I saw some of them on the field today, and let me tell you, they're going to be really good. So many different looks at the plate, at the mound. Obviously, you have a Northwestern coming back too. Excited to see their freshman class coming in. I saw Emma Blay, one of the incoming freshman pitchers this week on campus there in Evanston. So a lot of exciting teams, a lot of exciting matchups. Definitely going to try to be there to see them in person.
Yeah, Mary Nutter's schedule dropped like 2 hours ago? That thing dropped like out of nowhere, just poof. And yes, love the emojis. So if you don't have the full slate, it is on all the socials. But I hate to say it, but I didn't see OU on there, Gray.
Yeah,
No?
that there were two things that stuck out to me. No OU here.
Yeah.
And one of the stories I talked about it out of the box. I've talked about it on the dirt. No Texas Tech. No Texas Tech in Clearwater and no Texas Tech at the Mary Nutter. And one of my concerns that I mentioned on an episode somewhere, knowing how schedules work, Craig Snyder probably drafted or at least sent out contracts for most of the non-conference schedule before he took the Tennessee job. Their non-conference strength of schedule last year was in the 80s. So I'm a little concerned about what the slate could look like for Texas Tech in the non-conference and what that could mean for their seeding potential. I know that that's like major galaxy brain. Gray, why are you thinking of that in September? But that was kind of one of the first thoughts that I had when I did not see Texas Tech listed here.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gray. Hopefully, we'll get some more Nyjah Kennedy action. And once that schedule comes out, I did see that Texas Tech did just release their fall schedule. So you can check out their fall schedule that they just released. But I agree with you, Gray. Two heavy hitters not at the Mary Nutter. that we won't be able to see this year. And OU historically has used that as a recruiting tool because a lot of those kids from California. But
Yeah.
again, I like what you said, Sydney. I think we're seeing a new Big Ten with some addition, like you said, of some of those pack schools coming in. And that's going to be another conference that's going to look very, very different, Gray. I know we just talked about the SEC, we talked about the pack, and that Big Ten. That is going to be different in softball. And I just saw a flyover of actually UCLA softball or UCLA football and then miles traveled for the football
Yeah.
team this season and how many games is in a football season. What is it, 11?
Yeah.
Think about that travel schedule for softball. I literally, my mind right now, I hope they figure out a good solution to that because if you take a look at that graphic just with football with that many games, then equate that to softball. It's going to be really interesting for those administrators and for the budgets of these programs.
Yeah.
So I hate to be Debbie Downer here, but this is something to keep an eye on because that's a reality of the new Big Ten as well.
Well, and I'll throw this in, and then Sydney, I want to get your thoughts as well. Just to the budget point, in an era where budget cuts are pretty normal because of the House case that is going to have all this money from athletic departments going straight to student athletes. So there are a lot of schools who are having to chop down on how travel works and are trying to cut budgets any way they can. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Big Tens deal with that. Sydney, what do you have to say?
Well, one, I saw that graphic. Stanford volleyball just posted it, and obviously they have more games, and they are the most fall program this season in terms of travel miles. I think it was over 33,000. Insane. But I want to see somebody track a softball school, so that's like me putting into the universe because I agree. I've Big Ten has yet to obviously release their schedule, but I've been able to see now enough of a few of them to know that there is some really exciting powerhouse matchups where you have historically one of the top, I would say, 6 programs in the Midwest are headed out west at one of the 3 locations. So I think it's something people really should be excited about for when that is released because there are going to be some matchups that those series I feel will predict who is champion of the Big Ten in 2024-2025 season.
You know, the other Big Ten team I want to mention, Washington is playing in the Marionetter, and I'm not sure if there is a team in the country that I have more questions about than the Washington Huskies. Just because of how the offseason went, I really don't know what they're going to look like this year, and I'm curious about what the slate is in the non-conference. I actually know one of them, no spoilers for me, and then also the Marionetter as well, and then what the Big Ten slate is. Tom predicted that Washington would miss the NCAA tournament this year. I'm not ready to go that far, but it's just the team that I feel like I know the least about of maybe anybody in America.
I think it's a good point, and I think historically, if you were to break down the Big Ten, they've got on average 3 to 4 schools have made the tournament. But now with the addition, obviously, Oregon, Washington, UCLA, what I foresee is you're going to see that number be around 6 to 7, at
Yeah.
least hopefully around that 7 mark. So as long as they can stay in the top 7 of the Big Ten throughout the season, I see them going into the tournament. Again, way too early to even be predicting this, but those are my early thoughts, early September thoughts.
Hey, you know who might have some early September thoughts? Maybe it's Mr. Brady Vannon. Hey, pal.
Wow.
Coming
Another
in the
day.
dad cove. Look at that.
Look at the hat. Look at the crib in the background. We're just killing it right now.
That's the pen. That's the Baylor pen when stuff has to get done by both parents. He hates it.
Hey, Brady.
Hello. Yeah, just working off I think 5 hours of sleep because my son just won't stay asleep. But it's still prime time. It feels just like crazy weekends in the spring again.
Did you have any takes on the Marionetter slate? We're going to talk about the transfer rankings in just a minute. Brady did a great job with it, but any takes on the Marionetter discussion that we just had?
I mean, yeah, obviously the Oklahoma not being there was obviously the first thing I kind of thought about. Just very interesting. Obviously, with the crowds there, it kind of soaks it up. I thought it was interesting seeing Arkansas. That was also my other big one. Just because that one, we're gonna have a little bit of a different looking lineup, in terms of them kind of graduating a lot of seniors and stuff. But that was kind of it. I think we see a lot of the same kind of faces that we usually see out there, but definitely like a solid group. And just in a year where I think there's a lot more unknowns than we've had in previous years, I think it'll have a lot of fun like matchups that could play dividends when turns the selection Sunday.
And I just did it now. I should have done this earlier, and I apologize. The teams that are doing the Clearwater Mary Nutter doubles, unless I missed one, Missouri, San Diego State, ooh, and UCLA. Oh, the balloons are here. You'll float too. Sydney, do you have any other nuggets before you go to sleep and get ready to go fishing with Jordy Ball tomorrow?
I just like the party you just threw. Like you were so excited for those teams double dipping. I have double dipped twice in my 2 seasons, and there's no two better tournaments than that. So those teams get plenty of opportunities to boost their RPI. And like I look at like a San Diego State, what a blessing to put yourself in contender to set yourself up if you get some really big time wins all the way when it matters come postseason. So that's a program who I'm circling those 2 weekends because that could be a season changer right there.
Well, before we bid you adieu, Sydney, Nate says, Sydney, I'm a huge fan of your work. You're extremely talented.
Aw,
I concur.
Yes.
thank you. That just made my day. Thank you, Nate. Thank you all.
You're the
Sending
best,
so much
Sydney.
Bye,
love.
Sid.
Bye.
Have fun. Catch a big one.
I will.
And send pictures. And she will. We're still here on the Softball America podcast. Gray Robertson, Terry Henry, Brady Vernon is here. All right, Brady, let's talk about the transfer rankings. General overview, was this the hardest year so far of trying to put together a list like this just because we had so many big names and also kind of unexpected contenders in the mix?
I think the hardest part was it felt like I had to keep pushing it further down the line as I, one, waited for Nigel's decision, which I think was influencing a lot of like the top ones. And there was also just a lot of late newcomers. There's like some that I just, at some point I had to like make the list to make the list. Like, I think, there's a few names that come to mind, but it was definitely very interesting. Just a lot of like who kind of showed up where and just the combinations of it. You kind of a lot of saw like just plugging some holes. I think when you kind of see to that, like Oklahoma State, they desperately needed pitching, and so they went out and got Ruby Malin and Riley Crandall. And then even like Florida needed a shortstop and maybe another kind of veteran presence in the circle, just to kind of pick up some innings. And so there's not a lot of ton of like big groups. There's a lot of groups that are just like 2 or 3 additions, but you can see where they're trying to fill out the rest of the roster.
Was it a no-brainer, Texas Tech #1? I mean, obviously, right? Like, was that the easiest part of all this?
I kind of told myself I was like, it's going to be hard to name anyone that wasn't where Nyjah ended up because I think that's just a generational arm. But I mean, it is a very solid group. Obviously, that Louisiana team was very, very talented, and then even had like an Alana Johnson, who at one point was leading the Pac-12 in home runs last year, and so. And she's very versatile. She might even be in the infield for them. That was her natural position coming into Washington and stuff. And so be interesting how that all kind of gels together. But yeah, when you add Nyjah Kennedy, things are good.
And when you talk about Nyjah Kennedy, Brady, I know you and I obviously were talking about these transfer classes, but I think for you and I think Florida, like you mentioned, I think Tim Walton, what he did in the off season was pretty impressive. And I know that obviously bringing in a freshman class and signing Caroline Stanton, the 2026 top ranked #1 ranked recruit in the country. What are your thoughts on the Gators and that outlook the next couple of years?
I mean, that's the other thing is, I mean, they have so many returners coming back. I mean, the only like primary starters they lost were Skylar Wallace, which is a huge loss, and Katie Kistler. But I mean, trying to think of the top of mind, the 2024 class, you have Talon Thomas, who was just like the MVP of a Alliance Championship Series with the Bombers. And then you have Caitlin Oxley, who probably is going to be the #2 pitcher behind Rothrock and stuff. But I think just adding someone like a Emily, no, this is Kara Hammack. Emily Winstead, like getting confused here.
Okay.
Yeah, I watched Oxley
Guys,
as well. So I think when you take a look at what the Gators are doing, I'm impressed and I'm excited to see how Florida does, just coming off obviously that huge Women College World Series run. Like you said, losing Skylar Wallace is big, but I think what Coach Walton has done to bolster that offense and in the circle, they're going to be tough in the circle too.
And it will be interesting who actually plays shortstop between Holdruff and Cahalan. And sorry for the brain mesh. When you have 100 tweet notifications on for a top 100 list of girls, the phone just doesn't stop and my brain is just broken because I have to decipher what is just visit pictures and commitment pictures. And you have a 10-month-old crawling on you at every second and beating you with hard wooden yellow balls and breaking some glasses.
It's okay, Brady. We have to say, I think everybody on our staff at Softball America, all of our subscribers, members, viewers, appreciates you to the nth degree. So I know that you can't pull one name out, but the fact that you can pull hundreds and hundreds daily and keep the softball world updated on commitments, on transfers, on recruits, I think speaking for myself, not only me, but our staff, we appreciate what you do day in and day out, not only for Softball America, but for the entire sport of softball. So hopefully that gave you some time to pull some names.
I tried my
Good
best.
stalling, Tara.
I will say they're not like ranked in the top 5, but I think one of my favorite transfer classes is LSU's. Kind of adding Lassiter, Vela, and Hodge. I think Lassiter really has a chance to be a very, very good player in the SEC. It was kind of funny their coming out party for Ole Miss was against LSU in that series where they lost their first game. I think, Hodge, I think she's going to add something defensively. I think this is going to be a team that they're not going to have crazy offensive numbers, but I think they're going to want to pitch well and play well defensively. I think that's where Hodge is going to really try to help there, somewhere in the middle end field, wherever she plays.
I agree with you, Brady, and I think both those names in Lassiter and Hodge brings a little bit of grittiness to that team as well. Obviously, Jayla Lassiter, just an incredible athlete, formerly at Ole Miss. I think both those names are going to bring some grittiness to the Tigers this season.
Yeah, LSU is an interesting one for me, just because we talked about the Georgia senior class a little bit earlier. The LSU senior class is gone, and that was a pretty massive group. Taylor Pleasance, Allie Newland, that whole gang, and it was also kind of a gang that I love them all. They're good people, but they never got to OKC, and so it's going to be interesting to see how this program can get back to Oklahoma City, because it's been a minute with this transfer class, with a really good recruiting class coming in, and with all the younger players that are back on the roster. And as we, referenced earlier, the SEC schedules here, they close the last 5 weekends of SEC play: Alabama at home, at Texas A&M, at Texas, Florida at home, at Arkansas. That's tough. So you're going to need that grittiness that y'all were talking about in those types of matchups, because those are going to be the games where one mistake could determine whether you win or lose.
Oof, that's a tough slate.
It's hard.
I don't have words for that. That is going to be a tough slate for the Tigers. Gosh, when you take a look at, I think, Gray has a wonderful sheet with the breakdown of all the SEC schedule. I think we could actually have an entire show breaking down this SEC schedule and what that's going to look like. But if you're Beth Torina, I think, in taking a look at that, again, having some more tools, not only on offense, but in the circle, is going to help out the Tigers.
I've got a transfer class question for you, Brady. How does the Oklahoma transfer class this year compare to usual Oklahoma transfer classes, and also compare to the state of softball right now? So kind of 2 separate questions here.
I think the most important part is that I know we kind of talk about, in the past, OU generally has added players that have only 1 year left eligibility, and kind of just filling in what they need to surround what was that great senior class that just graduated. What's very interesting about all 5 of the girls they brought in this year is that 3 of the position players kind of fill into a junior class that recruiting class is somewhat kind of disappeared from OU. They've kind of transferred out, like such as like an Avery Hodge and stuff. And so they actually needed to resupply that junior class for position players. So when you add an Abby Dayton, an Aviani, and Isabella Emmerling, you're filling holes while also just kind of supplementing. Like this is a class that we really needed production from anyways, because you lost so much veteran leadership in the lineup. And I had Abby Dayton ranked 5th in the lineup, but I think she is just an absolutely great addition. I know not everyone can watch Pac-12 networks, but she is great in the outfield. She's really spunky at the plate. She just had the batting title in the Pac-12, which I think is just very, very awesome to see. She's not going to be Jada Coleman in center field, but not a whole lot of us can be that great at something like Jada Coleman in center field. And so I think that may be one of my favorite additions of the whole year, and especially just because there is a little bit of Gasso trending. She did work with DJ at Utah, and so now maybe that's just a familiar name and why they made it a big approach to land her.
I love that comment that not everybody can watch the Pac-12. It gets me every single time. What I think I'm most excited about, Brady, is not only obviously the transfer classes and the incoming class, but in hearing Coach Gasso say she kind of gets to coach again, right? When you graduate, that big of a class that has never lost a championship game in their career, never will lose a championship game in their career. When you graduate, like you said, a Jada Coleman, the Kinsey Hansons, the Riley Boones, Nicole Mays, Alyssa Bree, like that class is insane. So now we're going to see Coach Gasso coach again, and JT and Jen Rocha. Like, I think that's the really cool part is there's some question marks for the Sooners as well, and who's going to step up and who's going to step into those roles, which we've seen the same athletes in those roles for so many years. So for me, that's another exciting, storyline to watch this next year is what is OU going to look like? Because again, it's going to be new. It's going to be new faces.
And just another random OU topic. I know some people have some panic because OU has not landed a ton of 2026 commits so far. I just want to let everyone know that I think it's going to be a smaller class for the Sooners because the 2025 class that is going to be signing soon is absolutely ridiculous, which includes the top 3 from Softball America's rankings and another, I think, 3 more in the top 15. There's a lot of good talent in the previous class.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
So
let me look at the future schedules real quick.
Yeah, no worries here. Oh, good. Fang's not panicking. Don't worry.
Well, Fang never panics.
And you just landed Jenny Finch's niece for the 2026 class.
Speaking of that, let's get into commitments. Well, we've got him, Gray.
Yeah, Brady. You said that you've been getting all these texts and commitment, pictures and whatnot. What has stuck out to you? I mean, we talked a little bit about Florida and Stanton going to join Tim Walton and the Gators in Gainesville, but what else has stuck out to you as you've busily retweeted all these announcements on the X?
I think it's a lot different. I think a lot of girls are still kind of taking their time. We saw a bigger wave this second weekend of visits and such after it opening up September 1st. But I mean, of our top 100, we're not even at 20 commitments. So that's a lot of kids who still need to make like decisions and stuff. And I think it's cool to see that, they are taking their time. They're taking visits elsewhere and really being open to their options. So, I think this is something like we're generally going to see in the October and like November of like some of the best still waiting. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's fine for this to be more like football and basketball. But I think just what stood out, I mean, Texas landing 2 in the top 5 with Annie Abdullah and Maddie Dottie. Abdullah was the number 1 position player in our ranking, 2nd overall, and Dottie was the 2nd pitcher and 4th overall. I mean, that's a pretty good foundation to start a recruiting class off. And I know like pitchers love to work with Mike White, and then Abdullah really commended like working with Steve Singleton and stuff. Another one is like Cal. Cal has 5 commits already, 2 of them in the top 100, and I think.
There you go, Nate.
Look, that was like simultaneous. That was Nate. Are you Brady?
Yeah,
maybe.
need a job.
Nate Nate messes me a lot about his Aggies, and so it reminds me that I still have someone that may like Trisha Ford more than myself. Um, but yeah, it's noticing that there is taking time and just like noticing that kids are trying to find the best spot for them, and like some of them are wowed, and like I think it's really stood out that a lot of the West Coast kids are going to the SEC, and like through conversations, it's that it has nothing to do with like that they were going to travel anyways. It's just like their SEC just garnered like the attention. Possibly, I mean, like Sydney Williams, who just committed to LSU, and she's from Sandra Day O'Connor High School, which has produced like Grace Lyons, Jocelyn Erickson, and Riley Holtdorf. And she said that the atmosphere at Tiger Stadium is like nothing she's ever seen. And if you've lived in the West Coast, you know that the football games aren't anything like they are in the SEC. And so it's just kind of it's important to notice that like the SC is really dominating this, and what they're doing shows like the investment in softball, and where the other programs may have to really boost up in that effect.
And Brady, I think what's so wonderful about what you are saying right now is that athletes in the past were not taking their visits, and they were committing to a school and unable to go on official visits and go to a football game, meet the current team, meet the support staff, talk to the academic counselors, and really get a feel for these college campuses. And that's how it was for a very long time. And then we went away from that. So I hope athletes are taking their visits and really thinking about what's a good fit for them, because there's one thing that's a good fit for, what people outside you or your family or your coaches want. And it's truly about what is best for you as the athlete, the student athlete. Is it the school? Is it the softball program? Is it having a great college experience? And when you say great, having a big city or a small city. And I think when we take a look at all these attractive programs, we're talking about the SEC. Yes, the SEC is great, but maybe that's not for everybody. And I think that at the end of the day, the SEC has this, label of like, oh, I'm going to the SEC. That the SEC is not for everybody. So I hope athletes are taking into account what is important to them and what they truly need as athletes and student athletes, because obviously the SEC is a great conference, but there are other great, incredible schools across the country. And I'm really happy that players are going out and able to take their visits, whereas before it was committing in 8th grade and then pretty much done with it. So that's really cool to me.
I concur. And I also wonder, I was just digesting everything Tara said, and I was also thinking, as a coach, and I would love to ask a coach this, maybe I will on media days coming up. How important is the football schedule to when these recruits come in? Like if I'm Patrick Murphy, you got to try and balance, right? All right, we want the kids we really want here as soon as possible, but also if we want to show them the best of Alabama, there's a little game against Georgia coming up in 2 weeks that's going to be like the hotbed of college football. So I wonder how much coaches, I guess, toggle between those decisions when they try and pick, all right, this is what weekend this person is coming, and so on and so forth.
Brady, you got that, or you want me to take it?
Well, yeah, and like to that point, I think 2 weeks ago, like the opening weekend, Oklahoma State had a really, really big crowd of kids come to the football game. Oklahoma State didn't play in Stillwater last week, and there wasn't as big contingent of visits and such. And I think that's like that's part of the atmosphere. Like as a spring athlete, you get to enjoy like going to football games during the fall because you get to be a student athlete, and that's a big part of it. And that's what people really desire. Like you get that, and like that was like to Tara's point, like you didn't get to have that opportunity in like in 8th grade and just having the fun with your soon to be like best friends for the next 4 years or whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. And I think coaches do look at a football schedule. I can tell you, I had asked a few coaches to come in and coach Great Britain, and a couple of them said, "Hey, I can't because that's a huge recruiting weekend for us." So it is something that coaches take a look at. And why not? Why wouldn't you want to showcase your best experience to athletes that are potentially coming to your school? Because the Henry family loves a tailgate. Let me tell you, tailgating at the Rose Bowl is maybe not like tailgating in the SEC, but let me tell you, Mama Henry, she knows how to tailgate, right? So if people want to come and hang out with Henrys, you can always come to the Rose Bowl because I'll send you to my mom's tailgate. But what I'm saying is, tailgating is fun. Tailgating across the country is fun. And so, as a coach, you're going to want to give those athletes who you're trying to win over and trying to convince to come to your school for the next 4 years, hopefully, you're going to want to make it a big experience. So, great. To your point, yes, I do believe that coaches do schedule.
My guy Nate out here talking about Oklahoma hosting Tennessee. College game day is going to be there. First SEC matchup for Oklahoma football. I'm not, Brady, you're much more connected than I am, but I would have to assume that Oklahoma's got some important people coming this weekend.
This is true. It also helps when, even though there's not a football game, you're unveiling a statue of a pretty good head coach. That's a pretty good visit tool too.
Oh, yeah. I wish we could get Mendy on here because she had a great story about the statue unveiling of Coach Gasso and how wonderful that experience was. And Coach Gasso was quite emotional, and having former players there and having current players and recruits there. It's a pretty big deal to not only have an incredible field for softball players to play at, but then to have a statue. Is it bronze? Is that a bronze statue?
Unclear. I've never had a statue made after me, so I'm not sure the process.
Someone can let me know. But that's pretty incredible to have that statue unveiling. And I agree with you, Brady. I think that's probably pretty impressive too when you're taking your visit.
Yeah. Hey, Brady, is there anything else that you want to touch on the recruiting side? I know that while you've been on here, you probably have at least 864 text messages. So we got to let you get to those. But is there anything else that you want to touch on the recruiting front?
Just in general, just staying in touch with the site. Every week I try to do somewhat of a notebook of where kids are still planning on visiting with conversations. Try to keep a section of it, all the commitments there, even the ones that are outside our top 100. And just stay tuned to the site. There's some stuff happening in the background that they're building upon that's going to make it a lot easier to follow all this, which was a really big thing of why we made the move to On3 and stuff. And I know we've talked about that a lot, but it is very close. And I think it's going to be like really cool and a lot easier for softball fans to see all of this in one place. I know it's been very hard to track. It's very hard to track when your job is to track it. But there's just a lot of cool stuff there. We have like kind of team spotlights. And so coaches help us kind of like scouting report of their own players. I know a lot of times kids get on campus and a lot of fans just don't know what they're best at. And I think that just like that. And then there's just spotlights about a little bit about why each kid in the 2026 class and like why they got involved in softball and stuff. And so right now we're in a big recruiting period. Somewhat soon we'll start getting in the fall breakdowns. But I mean, we still have a ton of content, even though there hasn't been a true collegiate softball game played in months.
Yeah, and that's due to our Brady Vernon just churning out the content. He is a rock star.
Ayo.
I knew that was coming. And like Brady said, we've got some fun stuff happening in the background, and hopefully that can happen soon, because like Brady said, it'll be easier to track all of this. You'll be able to actually just like maybe do one click and figure out all of Caroline Stanton's history of all the things. So sneak peek. Sneak peek. Thanks, Brady.
Good to see you, my friend. Thanks, Brady.
Bye-bye.
Brady Vernon, legend, hardest working man. Yes. I mean, what in the world? Sleeping 4 hours a night and then just charting things like all day. I admire him.
Yes, and like he said, there's some really cool stuff that's happening on the website. So again, just be patient with us, folks. To be honest, it hasn't been that very, that long that we switched over. It hasn't been very long that we've been at Softball America. But with that said, there's some really cool things that are in the works, and we hopefully will have that out to you here in the next couple weeks. We're just waiting on our dev team to button that up and make it easy for you to navigate. But again, really cool. Some NIL stuff is going to be on there. Yep, really cool. And player cards, player profiles ish. So I probably can't tell you all that, but I did anyways. So
It's fine. It's not like we're live or anything. I can edit it and post. It's fine.
yeah, fine. Oh my goodness.
Tara, I know you wanted to touch on Patty Gasso, the statue. We mentioned the statue a little bit. I know that there was a lot about Patty Gasso and everything going on at Oklahoma that you want to discuss. So I will cede the floor to you. I mean, the statue unveiling, very cool. I like the pose they chose. That's half the battle. Pick the right pose. I think they did a good job. And obviously a proper bit of recognition for the coach that has dominated softball over the last decade.
Yeah, I mean, I think we went through it, Gray, but when you take a look at Patty Gasso and what she's done for the sport, what she's done for Oklahoma softball, obviously with the new contract, $2 million contract we're taking a look at, when we're raising the bar, if she continues to raise it, I think the next highest grossing coach from the research I've done would be Mike White at 625,000. Do you have anything different, Gray?
That sounds right to me.
Yeah, and then Lonnie's right there with them. Mike, Lonnie, and Trisha are all at 625. So when you take a look at Patty Gasso, and then the next coach is at 625,000, 2 million to 625,000. There's a big gap, but at least there's a gap. So that means hopefully, what is the saying?
A rising tide lifts all boats.
Thank you. So hopefully that's what happens. But when you take a look at the impact that she's had on the sport, incredible. And when you look at the top 10 earners in the sport of softball, at actually number 10 from my research is Joe Evans at Santa Barbara at 325, which is incredible, right? Like you're taking a look at 2 million and then 10 is 325. So huge range here in terms of salaries. And Murph's in there at 500,000.
Hey, I got to say, though, Joe Evans is just living her best life. I can't tell you how many times I would get on a Zoom with Coach Evans and in the offseason, and she'd be at a beach somewhere. And that was when she was at A&M. And now she's coaching at the beach. You go, girl. Get it. I mean, man, Joe Evans has got to be just thriving right now in every way. Doesn't she, like, bike to work? I mean, she's just killing it.
I don't know if you have been to Santa Barbara, Gray. I don't know if our viewers, listeners have been to Santa Barbara, but let me tell you, if you're going to go somewhere towards the end of your career, that's where I want to go. You could obviously bike to work. You could surf every day if you wanted to. I'm not sure if Joe's out there surfing. I mean, Sue Inkos will go up the coast and probably do some surfing up there in Santa Barbara. But if you're going to retire or finish your coaching career, I would do it in Santa Barbara. What a great place. But in terms of taking a look at those salaries, I just thought that was really interesting when you take a look at the discrepancies and how far ahead Patty Gasso really is from the rest of the country.
I've not been to Santa Barbara, but I am a supporter of the TV show Psych. So I feel like a Santa Barbara native at times, even though it was filmed in Vancouver. Okay, Tara Henry, we've also got a lot coming up the rest of the fall, the winter, and then getting into the 2025 season on Softball America. What are we allowed to tease to the viewers and listeners at home?
Well, like Brady said, we're in a huge recruiting period right now. Obviously, September 1st was a huge, milestone for a lot of athletes. So we're in a huge recruiting period at the moment. We'll have the commitments up. And then as we get into the fall, we'll have some fall reports on various programs across the country. We've got Sydney Supley and Nicole Mendez out on the road with some really incredible long form interviews. You just saw Sydney. Sydney's in Nebraska right now with Rhonda Ravel and the Cornhuskers. Again, obviously we didn't know she was going fishing with Jordy Ball, but that's probably going to be on the site for you all, I would imagine. So we're going to have some incredible video content across the country. Again, we'll have some recruiting spotlights. We're going to be out at travel ball and club tournaments this fall. I will probably be out at a few of those and throughout Georgia's high school season as well for softball is happening right now. So we'll be covering that. And then obviously getting into the 2020-25 season. The 2025 season. Can't even say it. And then we'll get into obviously coach interviews, podcasts, and a little bit new format for the podcast. We're figuring that out, and Gray and I will be launching what that's going to look like. But just excited to be back on and see everybody.
Well, I'll tell you now, everybody. I'll just say this. I'm not going to announce the whole thing, but many of you, Fang, I know you love this. Softball Media Days on the Out of the Box podcast, where we interview every SEC head coach. Those will not only be on the Out of the Box feed, but they will also be appearing in some capacity in one of the Softball America podcast feeds, whether it be It Just Means More or something. We'll have the interviews in there as well with all the SEC head coaches. I hope everybody says yes. Looking at some of you, but I'm not you, but coaches out there, and we're very excited to present that. This will be our 5th year where we've talked to every head coach in the SEC, and those emails will be out to the SIDs in exactly 1 month. So that'll be coming up in late November, early December, and we're very excited for that.
Yeah, exciting. I don't think I left anything else out other than kind of the player profiles that we're teasing that will be happening, and player rankings. So 2024 rankings, 2025 rankings, 2026s are out, and we have the 2027 hot watch list as well in terms of all the lists that will be on the site. So a lot of fun stuff happening.
I love it. The off season does not exist, and we've talked about that for years, but that also means good things for the podcast, because we're going to be back like a lot up before the 2025 season actually kicks off, which is going to be a lot of fun. And who knows who will swing by, whether it be Sydney Supley in a random city or Brady Vernon whilst being a father at home. I mean, just possibilities abound.
Yeah, you never know with our staff who's going to be where, other than pretty much Brady. We know he's going to be home with Baylor.
Yeah, and I typically am. I got the boards. You know, I got a pretty consistent spot, but you know, I travel too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Going to Georgia this weekend for a wedding. It'll be great.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Any final thoughts, Tara, before we wrap the show?
No, I just couldn't be happier with our staff, and you, Gray, and Brady, and Nicole, and Sydney, and Sierra, and the other Nicole Reitz, who's just like churning out spotlights. It allows me to obviously do some coaching, and I come back and I just am so, my heart just is like bursting with pride because of what we've been able to grow together in a few short months, and just incredibly thankful for you, Gray, for our community, for the sport of softball, and each and every one of you. So yeah, just really grateful.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, like, do whatever you got to do. Find the pods on wherever you get your podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, Apple, everywhere. Subscribe and download. That's helpful. And keep tuning in, keep following, do everything. Just stay plugged in, because as we joked / said confidently, the offseason no longer exists. So it might be the middle of September, but stuff is still going to come out that we got to talk about.
Absolutely. And let us know what you guys want to hear. Please send us a message, whether it's here in the chat or on our social media channels. Please let us know what you guys would like to hear. Interviews, player interviews, coach interviews. Let us know what you want, and hopefully we can bring that to you.
We'll do our best. Thank you to Brady Vernon for joining us. Thank you to Sydney Supley for joining us. Thank you to Sierra for all the work that she did, making sure that this was promoted out to the public. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Tara Henry. Always good to see you, my friend.
Thank you, Gray.
That's Tara Henry. I'm Gray Robertson. This has been the Softball America podcast. We'll catch you next time.